Okay, and then pull up the PowerPoint. We're good. Well, good morning. Come on in.
Good morning. Sorry to interrupt you.
This is the one on media training. It is.
Thank you.
Come on in. We are just getting started. We've got some people online, and have a seat.
Here we go. John Richard Leon. Nice to see you. Nice to see you.
Hi.
Good morning.
So I'm Brad Van Auken, and I am the marketing VP for Seneca Waterways Council. I'm also the marketing lead for National Service Territory 10. And this is a workshop really targeted at unit leaders, people in the units, maybe people at a district level, to help them better understand how they can pitch positive stories about scouting to the media. So we can go to the next slide. So why place stories in the media to begin with? First of all, it counteracts the recent bad news about youth safety and bankruptcy. We've been hearing so much about that. People need to hear good stories too. It builds awareness of BSA. It builds awareness of your unit, and it helps you recruit additional scouts. Your youth will appreciate seeing themselves in the news, right? They see a picture of themselves doing something cool, and it's in the newspaper, or it's covered on the local radio station or the local news station. It reinforces achievement and good deeds, things that scouting is all about. And it adds to the goodwill for the BSA movement. So we can go to the next slide. So I have here a media planning guide, which you can take when you leave. And a lot of what I'm covering will be in the media planning guide, so you can use it afterwards. So let's go to the next slide. So not every story gets covered. Just because you think it might be a story doesn't mean that somebody else thinks it's going to be a good story. It's a good story if it has some human interest. You know, it's a wonderful human interest story, or if it has a local angle. So you're in a local publication for, you know, a certain town, and it's about a unit in that town doing something in that town, or it ties into a holiday or special occasion. Scouts picking up used Christmas trees and recycling them, or scouts selling Christmas trees. It's tied into Christmas. It might represent a significant milestone or a major honor. So for instance, somebody made Eagle Scout, or once somebody became Silver Beaver, or, you know, perhaps a troop has been around for 50 years and you're celebrating your 50th anniversary. It has a direct impact on a publication's readership. If your kids are doing something around an urban garden, say, that's a perfect thing to go into a gardening publication. So think about the topic and who would be interested in it. Educate and entertain a publication's readers. Bottom line is people want to be either educated or entertained. And nowadays there's a lot of edutainment, which is, it is both educating and entertaining. If you can tie into what people are talking about today, it makes a big difference. So if people are talking about climate change or the economy or an upcoming holiday or whatever they're talking about, whatever's in the news, if you can tie a story into that, it has a better chance of being covered. So adding to discussions on current hot topics or issues. And then if it references prominent people, places, or things, prominent Eagle Scouts that are here in Rochester or are anywhere in the country, somebody that maybe won an award for being an outstanding Eagle Scout. And then visual impact. In every story, you want to have some visual to go along with it. Okay. So possible angles for Scout-related stories, right? Scout earns Eagle Scout. There's so many stories about people earning Eagle Scout. Earns a religious award. Performs a meritorious act. How about an interesting service project? Eagle projects or unit projects. An interesting unit outing. Sometimes these are covered. Our unit went to Washington, D.C. Our unit went to Sea Base. You can create a really nice story about going to Sea Base or going to Philmont or doing something really unusual. Participation in scouting for food or clothing drive. Participating in community cleanup. If your unit just adopts a park itself and says, gee, we're going to come in and clean up the litter in this park, that's newsworthy, especially to the town who's, you know, in which that park exists, right? The town's very interested to know that the scouts have come in and cleaned it up. I already mentioned milestone anniversaries, and maybe a longtime revered scout leader retires. Along with this, often there's good stories about third generation Eagle Scout or fourth generation Eagle Scout. We can go to the next one. And lately, obviously, the first girl Eagle Scout in our county, in our unit, and so on and so forth. So you have to think about what the publication's readers would find interesting. It's not what you find interesting. It's like, what's the publication, who reads it, and what do they find interesting? And you want a headline that grabs their attention. So I'm sharing here some published stories, examples that come out. BSA National compiles these every time, and yeah, you can just go. The first one that I wanted to highlight is a female Eagle Scout, and she talks about it isn't insurmountable as a woman to make Eagle Scout. Then the other one I'm highlighting on this one is the recycling Christmas trees. I mean, that's kind of good for the environment. What do you do with your used Christmas tree? Scouts are doing a good job with that. Next slide. And then, Eagle Scout Service Project. They're cleaning up and beautifying a park. This is newsworthy. And then this one delivers donated items to people affected by a Kentucky tornado. So, you know, there was a tornado and they decided as a unit to go out and help. Next one, they collect food for a food pantry. I mean, these are all good stories about Scouts. And here's one. I mean, Scout camps have been closed for a couple years or maybe a year or two, depending on the state and the council and the camp. They're reopened. Now our Scouts can go back out and go to camp. That's a story. Okay, next. Let's see. This one is, the tour of the Capitol. I had mentioned that, touring Washington, D.C. And scrap drive. They're picking up scraps and reusing them. Again, these are all projects, service projects, things that units can do that will make the news and that will be positive for the unit. And the last one is just they bring Christmas cheer to seniors. So the Scouts are going into, continuing care retirement communities or nursing homes, assisted living centers, and bringing cheer. You know, maybe singing Christmas carols, maybe bringing cookies, that sort of thing. So all of these are kind of good stories. Okay, we can go to the next one. And remember, a picture is worth 1,000 words, right? I mean, here, obviously a Norman Rockwell picture, but you have that picture and it tells the whole story. Next slide. So basic tips for good publicity. It's news, it's not free advertising, so don't write it like it's an ad. You're not promoting your unit, you're writing a story that's of interest to readers. Editors cut from the bottom, so you want to have the most important stuff at the top. You might have multiple paragraphs, but make sure your most important stuff is right at the top. Every release has 5 W's and 1 H. Who, what, when, where, why, and how. Tell the story completely in as few words as possible. So you don't get extra credit for using a lot of words or big words. And in fact, my best writing courses in college taught me to use as few words as possible to get the point across. So it should be, pretty short. They prefer to receive releases by email, so send it by email. And you can put the release in the body of the email and attach photos. And we're going to be talking in a minute about what kind of photos to send. And you want to have the contact person's name and phone number and email address so that they can get back to you if they have questions. Paper releases are often preferred by newspapers, typed double-spaced, and include the contact person's name and phone number. I already mentioned that, so we can go to the next slide. So the photos should be 100 to 300 DPI, 100 for black and white, but 300 for color. Basically, again, a photo is worth 1,000 words. It's good to send a photo with your article. For feature articles, if you think you want to have a feature article that might be like a longer article that you think is a really good story, You might want to call the editor first and pitch the story. This is what media relations people do. Media relations, the word relations means they maintain a relationship with the editors, with the writers, with the reporters, and they call them on a regular basis and say, how about this story? But you can call them directly and say, here's the story I have in mind. Our scouts are doing this. What do you think? And if the person says yes, then you go ahead and write the story around it. And then you can offer them exclusivity too, which makes them more likely to want to print it. I will say at this point that nowadays writing staffs are so thin. There are so few journalists left in a lot of these publications that it's gonna be hard to get somebody to come out to your event because there aren't too many people left that can do that. If it's a major event, you might be able to get somebody to come out. But what this really means is if you write these things well, they will pretty much take it as is and publish it. So if you have a good writer or a good writer with a good editor, and you've done it the way that we're pointing out here, a lot of times they'll just take the article and drop it in because they don't have time to rewrite. They don't have time to investigate. It's unfortunate, but it's good for organizations that want to pitch stories because you can pitch the story pretty much the way you want people to hear it. Let's see if there's anything else I missed in this. There's always a closing paragraph, and I'm going to get into this in a little more. But for instance, in our council, you might say, troop or pack or crew number such and such is chartered by Seneca Waterways Council with offices in Rochester and Geneva. The council serves youth, adult volunteers, and families in Monroe, Ontario, Wayne, Gates, and Seneca counties. This is kind of called boilerplate. It goes at the bottom. And it just, National Boy Scouts of America has their own boilerplate. We have boilerplate for our council, but this just kind of gives them the background of here's where this is coming from, a unit in Seneca Waterways Council. Okay. So I'm not going to go through all of these, but there are key things that need to be in a press release, and we're going to see an example of one in a minute. Headline, a date line. You want to have the date. You should always have the date. And you should always have for immediate release. You just have to write that up there. I'll show you where it is. You'll see it in a minute for immediate release. And then you want to have the contact information because they want to know who it's coming from and who they need to contact if they have additional questions. Okay. And you're going to have a lead paragraph that is all the W's and the H that I talked about. It's just all the specifics. But after that, you might have a body section that has backup information, proof points, reasons to believe, examples, data, statistics to back it up. And then you might have some supporting quotes. It's always nice to quote something. When I write press releases, I always try to quote the person who's in charge of the unit. It might be a senior patrol leader. It might be the scoutmaster. In a unit, it's always nice to get the youth leader, the senior patrol leader or the patrol leader or the Eagle Scout who organized the project and so on. But it's nice to give them a quote. And if they're doing something on behalf of a park or some other, I was recently in an Eagle board of review and he did something for a cemetery. We'll get the person who's in charge of the cemetery to say, this was a wonderful project and here's what the scout did, so on. Okay, next. It's nice to have a call to action, which is just say, what do you want people to get out of this? And maybe you don't want people to get anything out of it other than to know that your unit exists. But maybe you want to say, and we meet on Monday nights at 8 o'clock at this church. Come on down and join us. And then if there's any engaging details, then I talked about the boilerplate, which is that paragraph at the bottom. So I think we're done with this page. So here's an example. This is a very short press release, but it has all the components. As you see, it's on Boy Scouts of America letterhead, Seneca Waterways Council. It says for immediate release. It has a place for the date. It has the contact information. It has a title. It has a paragraph. And if you look in the bottom, it has the boilerplate. So this is a very short press release, but it has all the key components of a press release. We can go on. Now, and we can click it again. This is from the BSA newsroom. And what I wanted to point out on this one, you can click again, I don't know why. Oh, there it goes. Nearly 1,000 young women soar into history as the first female Eagle Scouts. I think that's a pretty good headline. I mean, not everybody is a copywriter, a journalist, a creative writer. Not everybody can come up with like the most pithy, profound headline, but this is a pretty cool one. It captures your attention. And that's my point with this. Then the other thing I want to point out, if you click on that, is there's the national BSA boilerplate there. They have their own boilerplate. Then I wanted to share with you, again, click. This particular press release has 7 paragraphs and 504 words. An ideal press release has 300 to 400 words, and it's on an A4 side. An A4 is like an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. So ideally, you've just got 1 page in a press release. You don't want any more than 1 page. And generally, it's 3, 4, 5, 6 paragraphs, and that's it. So here's another one from the BSA newsroom. I'm going to point out again the headline: Boy Scouts of America introduces new citizenship in the society merit badge. And I'm just going to point out boilerplate again. And in this one, they have 8 paragraphs and 8 words. So this one's a little longer, again, than the average or the recommended, but it's a nice press release. I'm not going to go into all of these bullets. These bullets are in your media planning guide, but basically here's some key concepts. If you're talking about committees or units or that sort of thing, it could be lowercase, but if you're talking about a specific thing like Boy Scout troop number 51, or basically if it's a proper noun, then it's capitalized. So if it's the Glacier Lakes district is capitalized, but if you're just saying it's a district in Boy Scouts, district isn't capitalized. The other thing I'll point out that isn't in here is now we're calling the program that is between Cub Scouts and Venturing Explorers Scouts BSA. So that's the official name of the program. That's the word you should use. And that's not the name of the organization overall. It's the name of the program that was the traditional Boy Scout program. Okay, I think, yeah. So these are the contacts. And for those of you who are watching from other councils, people that are going to be watching this later, this is just specific to Seneca Waterways Council. But here, and we encourage you, if you're doing this for another council, to put this together in this is a 4-page media planning guide handout that we're giving to people here that includes all this information. But basically, it is the person or the email address to which you should send press releases, the phone numbers for each of these publications. And so we have in print here, on the next page, we're going to show radio and TV. And so you see we have all these people that you can contact. We have left a couple out here, I noticed. The local ones around here, like the Pittsford Post or the Brighton this or the Grease Post, are more likely to cover local stuff because they're local newspapers. The DNC is more, the Democratic Chronicle is more likely to cover local stuff as well. We, I think, left out Rochester Business Journal because that has more of a business bent. The city newspaper, which tends to do, it's now owned by WXXI, tends to do more arts and cultural things. And there's a new one called the Rochester Beacon, which I think is edited or run by one of the Wilmots. It's a good publication, but we don't have that one on here as well. They tend to do the fewer number of articles on more important subjects. But anyway, so these are the contacts, these are the people you can contact. I want to go to the next page. There's one person in particular, if you're in the Finger Lakes area, he loves to do podcasts and do podcasts on Scouts. He's a friend of Scouts. So Ted Baker is the news director at Finger Lakes 1, and he interviews people. And if you just contact him, and this is his contact information, yeah, good idea. Take a photograph of that slide because that actually is not in this handout. But he will do podcasts related to anything that your unit wants to do. And so he's a good resource as well. And then we go to the next slide. For Seneca Waterways Council, we're instituting a unit marketing award. And what this is on a quarterly basis, units that do good things in terms of marketing, in terms of press releases and getting news coverage of their units, will be considered for a marketing award. And if you get the marketing award, I don't know if we can share what it is yet, Stephen, or we'll talk about that later.
Just ribbon streamers.
I was going to say there's a ribbon streamer for the flag, for your flag. That's a marketing award that would go on your unit flag. And there may be some other things at some point, but that's what the awards are. I went through this pretty quickly. Bottom line is a lot of publications nowadays are looking for good stories. They're looking for something to fill their newspaper. They don't have a lot of time to write the stories themselves. And so if you have someone who is good at writing, who likes to do this kind of stuff in your unit, it might be a parent, it might be, you know, somebody on anybody associated with the unit who's, in fact, it'd be great if it's a scout that really is a whiz at writing, to create these articles. It can only help Boy Scouts. It can only help your unit. It's a worthwhile activity. And we need to be doing more of this around the country on a local basis, so people know that Boy Scouts is alive and well, and that Boy Scouts is doing a good thing, and it's a good organization to have in your community. So any questions at this point, either online or in the room here? Anything not clear? How about anybody online?
I'm going to disagree with you on one thing.
Okay.
You said that this is not advertising for your unit. This is totally advertising for your unit. It just doesn't need to come off as an advertisement.
You are totally correct. I stand corrected. It is advertising for your unit. It just shouldn't seem like it's advertising. It should seem like it's just a story. You're right. Thank you. Anybody else? Yeah.
This is wonderful and very comprehensive. I'd add that in addition to the regular traditional media that you'd see, if you do a project for the church newsletter will want that. So in the spirit of write once and publish many, you know, this is not just I've got to do all this work for one news outlet. Think about if you impact the church, you guardian of the church, the garden club should know, the church newsletter should know, the church secretary should know, maybe the village could know too. So you cultivate that mailing list, you'll have a lot of, you'll be able to write once and publish to many different outlets. And even if you don't get it carried, you publish that out, that letter will certainly come back for 50 cents. It's a very good lesson.
Thank you. And in case people didn't hear it, I'm going to repeat your comment just to make sure it gets on tape. He was saying, gee, make sure that you're just not using this story once. You could pitch it to a church newsletter, send it to the church secretary, see if it gets in the church newsletter, but also to your village, also to local garden clubs. There are a lot of publications outside of just local kind of municipality publications. I mean, a lot of not-for-profits have publications, and someone might be interested in what the unit did. There might be a publication for the Parks Department, and you've done a lot on behalf of the parks. They might publish an article on it. So be creative about thinking where you can publish it. You know, we haven't listed every single organization in every newsletter they publish. In fact, we haven't listed any of them. We've listed the major news sources. So do think about that. You know, I have a blog that has RSS feeds. It goes out to 40,000 people. It's picked up by Amazon authors page. It's picked up by Goodreads authors page. It's picked up all over the place, and I repurpose it. In marketing, if you've got good content, you can repurpose it many times. It might require a rewrite, or made shorter or made longer, a different headline, but and then social media. I mean, if the story's there, don't forget about putting it on. If your unit has a Facebook page, or your unit has, you know, a Twitter account, or whatever it is, make sure you put it out there. Or maybe it's on your council's page. Your council lets you, you know, post these sorts of things on their pages. I remember reading one about a leader that was doing, I think it was a trek across the Appalachian Trail. And that was posted on social media, and we followed his whole trek. It was pretty cool. So any other questions?
Do you have any suggestions on dealing with a in-person interview and when that could potentially go bad? Kind of a bait and switch, or they start bringing up topics that you are not comfortable talking about or informed about talking about?
That is a very good question. Hopefully you'll never run into that situation. People are media trained. I'm media trained. I know Stephen is media trained. Most council executives are media trained, but what they teach you in media training is if somebody has a purpose other than what you thought it was, and you thought you were going to pitch a fun story about cool things that Scouts were doing, and they want to talk to you about bankruptcy or pedophiles or something that you just don't want to talk about. One of the key things is just to kind of, the way you see politicians do it, they ignore the question and they just go back and repeat what their key point was. So for instance, if somebody wants you to get into something, we won't even go into what it is. If somebody wants you to get into something that you just don't want to get into, well, how about this? You could say, well, you know, I'm not in a position to be able to comment on that. But what I would like to say is our unit is just having a great time with, you know, picking up people's Christmas trees. So what you do is you just ignore inflammatory questions. You do not answer them. You do not, they're just, and some reporters are really good. They'll ask the question 6 different ways and you'll say no the first time, no the second time, no the third time, no the fourth time. And they're hoping on the 5th try, you're going to say something that they can quote you on that goes against what you wanted to communicate. So the key is just to stay on topic, to stay positive about Scouts, and don't go down any path that they would have you go down. I don't know if that's helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. I would also suggest that if anybody's dealing with the media, they should have their Scout executives' contact information. And if those questions come up, you know, they can say, you know, this is the appropriate person to have that discussion with.
Yes, Scout executives are the people that are supposed to respond to it, unless it's a national thing, then it's referred to National Boy Scouts. But yes, they're all media trained and they know what to say. Don't try to be the spokesperson for Boy Scouts ever. What you're doing is you're pitching a story about your unit. You're pitching a positive story about your unit in Scouting. You're not the representative Boy Scouts of America. Anything else? Well, I thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. Hopefully this has been useful. And we have been recording this, so we're going to post